Last mile delivery is the final step in the supply chain and is often considered the most crucial part of logistics journey, ensuring a package reaches the final customer. India's last mile logistics has seen heightened activity over the last few years. To talk about the sector, we have with us today Ratnesh Verma, the founder and CEO of Pidge. Ratnesh, good to have you with us today.
Likewise, Pranbinga, thank you very much for having me on your call.
Perfect. So, first question to you would be, how would you characterize India's logistic industry, and how has it evolved, especially after the pandemic?
Yeah, look, I think there's an old saying that it takes 21 days to make or build a habit. Pandemic was literally 2.5 years, and it led to irreversible consumption behaviors, so changes in consumption behaviors. First, need for at-home delivery. People who were very skeptical, as you call them in adoption, the kind of like the late laggards or the late majority, were now using apps to order things home. So that at-door consumption became an irreversible trend. The second thing that's happened is because of the pandemic, the reliability took precedence over cost. Reliability, safety, all of that stuff became very, very important because again, the psyches were fairly impacted by the pandemic. So those were the two main changes that happened. But we also saw during the entire pandemic that while on one hand there was an increase in the consumption, the supply chain was completely broken. And as you rightly said, the last mile is the final piece in the entire logistics puzzle, and it often becomes the bottleneck. So I think people realized, companies realized that to deal with the supply chain, the solutions have to be different. We can't continue to do, what we've been doing in the past, and that's really some of the things that happened. The other thing that really happened was a need for collaboration of resources.
Right. So, India has a new logistics policy. What are your views on that?
I think it's a step in the right direction. The logistics policy has the right intent from a building digitization, building productivity, building efficiency, and all of that is fantastic. But I think it needs to be, in just my humble view, the entire process needs to be far more holistic in its approach. Whether it's framing of laws around, take something as GST. I think GST is one of the best things that happened in our country to get away from the fragmented sales tax and other taxes structure. But today, if you're a tech company and if you're working across 28 states and 8 union territories, you need 36 GST registrations and you need to do 36 filings. And that kind of simplicity in our processes, in our laws, I think that needs to be embedded as well. I know there is the gig worker, the national labor policy, together with the defining the gig role. Now, all of that has to be taken in kind of like one holistic manner. I mean, you can't look at logistics in one and then gig and human resources differently. And then, of course, in the monsoon session, there is going to be the data privacy. Now, all these three different and several other components are part of the one. And I think there just needs to be it will be great if there is more cohesion around it. And I think again, just from all steps in the right direction, and I just feel that it's the better collaboration, the cohesion between the various elements would be helpful. The other thing I think which we should be aware of is that e-commerce blurs boundaries. And they blur the boundaries of states. And let's stay within the realms of our country. And the movement from an e-commerce point of view, from a digital point of view, is a lot more freer. And we need to reflect that in the rest of our policy as well. So I'm very excited. I'm very optimistic that the government is thinking in the direction. And I just, as a very passionate person in the e-commerce space, in the logistics space, as an Indian, I'd just like to see all of this come together in a cohesive and a faster manner.
Right. What are the challenges that you see in the logistics space, and what are some of the low-hanging solutions that you think can approach?
Yeah, look, I think the single biggest challenge in the logistics space is, um, the lowest denominator is lacking digitization. In order to, as a solution, what's been happening over the last several years, several startups, they're creating layers upon layers upon layers. They're middlemen, they're aggregators. That doesn't solve the problem. The problem needs to be solved by digitizing the lowest denominator, the rider, the unorganized sector. Let me ask you, the two questions which always kind of like bother me is, despite all the logistics and delivery companies that have emerged over the last 5, 7 years, why are more businesses doing their own deliveries versus through delivery companies? In fact, 3 out of 4 deliveries are done through their own riders. Why is that? The second question that kind of like always bothers me is that why in the ecosystem do you have nobody makes money? I don't need to talk about all the players. The unit economics is completely broken. The burns are unsustainable. Why doesn't anybody make money? And I mean, those are the kind of questions we should be asking ourselves and taking a step back. And the answer really is that you can't solve a problem by just, if you have a wound, you can't just put 4 layers of band aid on it. It doesn't solve the problem. So to me, the challenge is, there's no focus on digitizing the lowest denominator, the rider, the unorganized sector. 80% of the last mile sector is still unorganized. It's people who don't have access to technology, or low tech or no tech. And why is that the case? Everybody has smartphones. So the challenge is that, and that is exactly where the solution is. That is the low. And we create technology that is as simple to use as some of the other things. I mean, I think Paytm has done a fantastic job in, onboarding and digitizing payment gateways for 30 million merchants. And I think that's exactly what's needed in the logistics space as well.
Right. So how unique is the last mile logistics in India? And you have touched on it in the earlier question, but how do we strengthen this space?
Look, I think again, you got to take a step back and see why is the problem there. First of all, in markets like India, which are rapidly growing, the infrastructure is rapidly growing. There's rapid real estate development happening. The roads are getting widened and sometimes getting closed. All of that creates a lot of problem in the last mile delivery. The second thing is it comes back to digitization, and I think the central theme to everything is digitization. Now, a lot of our geocoding, as just is very street level. It's not an address level. Now, until that, and if you, it's hard to find, and like where you stay, where I stay in Gurgaon. It's hard to find my own location, my own locality, my own apartment block in Google Maps. Now, that creates challenges with last mile. Sometimes it's going to take you a couple of kilometers away, and then you're going to take a U-turn and come back. And all of that stuff those are practical issues. So, geocoding is something that is one of the biggest blockers in efficient last mile logistics. And until and unless, that evolves from being a street level geocoding to an address level geocoding. So I stay in an apartment complex in a certain tower. Fine, it doesn't have to be down to my home, which may be on a different floor, but at least to the entrance of the tower. The geocoding needs to bring me there, and that absence is one of the biggest challenges. Now that makes India very, very unique, just compared to some of the other markets.
Right. There's a lot of focus now on sustainability. How do you ensure that in the last mile delivery space? So you talked about, a lot of small players in this space as well. How do you ensure that?
Yeah, look, that's a great question, because look, the obvious answer to that is in being green, and I think we all support from in just in terms of we need to move towards clean fuel, we need to move towards green energy, and those are steps in the right direction. But my perspective is different to all of that. I think sustainability comes when you can actually get more from less. How do you actually get more output from a rider how do you actually get more, from lesser resources? How can you optimize a rider's route? How can you get him to do 4 deliveries in the time and in the distance that he's doing one? How do you minimize his travel time? Now, if we can, the infrastructural issues take much longer to come to fruition. By the time we are able to find commercially viable solutions from an EV point of view, that's too long. I mean, we need to be thinking about doing something for our environment today, and that starts with making little steps in terms of how do you make the rider more efficient, how do you get more out of less. So those are some of the things that we should be thinking. How do you build interoperability? How do you actually make sure that for some of the other things, like how do we build more discipline from a demand side point of view? A couple of years back, and I'm quite again, just I've seen this during my days at Stanford, but this whole 10-minute delivery, 15-minute delivery, it's not sustainable. And sustainability is a very 360 concept. It's environment, but it's also the sustainability of other resources. So I think we need to be more sensible in terms of what are the propositions that we're floating? Are they sustainable? And how do we build interoperability? How do we build a hybrid culture?
Right. So coming to your business, what was the idea behind setting up Pidge, and how are you different from the others in the market?
Yeah, I think two things here. First, I kept asking myself the question, and this was, when I was in my previous corporate life, and I was attempting to have deliveries done for my business. And I kept asking myself the question that why do you have to choose between reliability and convenience? Why do I have to choose between cost and flexibility? Why do I have to have those trade-offs? Which was the starting point. And we wanted to kind of like challenge that entire hypothesis. And of course, something that I previously said, as a responsible businessman, it really does bother me when businesses are just burning capital without any outcomes. And I kept asking myself, why is unit economics broken? They're not broken in most other countries in the world. Why is it broken here in India? So kept asking myself those questions, and we started experimenting with building a truly interoperable hybrid network. We built a network which was catering to all kinds of business, not only just, today businesses are very categorized. They're either dining or pharmacy or, grocery. We said, hey, what if you did everything? What if the rider could go and do an aftershave delivery in the morning, and then do a food delivery in the afternoon, and then do a pharmacy delivery, and then just keep busy, get more out of it, do real-time order clubbing, and stuff like that, do through Superloop distribution, cover larger distances, make it more sustainable. So we experimented with that, and on the other side we said, hey, why does everything have to exist in a silo? Why does your own riders, unorganized sector, the 3PL, they're all existing in their own little silos? What happens if you put them together? How does that make the entire ecosystem more efficient? And that's exactly what makes us very different today, because what we have done is broken those barriers. We have gone ahead and created a platform where we encourage businesses to work with all kinds of demand channels, work with marketplaces, take orders on your website, take orders on a WhatsApp. We'll aggregate it. We'll make it efficient from a delivery point of view. And on the delivery, work with whoever you want to work. You want your own riders? That's fine. If they're not available, work with 3PL. If they're not available, work with the unorganized sector. We will build that digital parity. And I think that whole process of, focused on building the ecosystem by bringing that digital parity, and again, something that I previously said, making sure that the lowest denominator, that unorganized sector, the supplier, digitally enabling them so that they can be at par with any other 3PL. That's what's exciting, and that's what's kind of like made Pidge, very unique today.
Right. How has business progressed over the years? How many cities you are operated in? What are the kind of revenues that you're booking?
Yeah, so we are currently in 12 cities, and we've done over 6 million transactions. We're doing 2x growth quarter on quarter in terms of our transactions. We work with over 1,500 businesses, which is also kind of like growing at 30% quarter on quarter. So, last year, of course, we're a private company, but we had, we clocked $1.2 million in the last financial year. So it's very excited to have built, but most importantly, what we've been able to do is to build a business that is positive at a gross margin level, that is positive at a unit level. So it's building scale with sustainability.
Right. Last question to you would be, how do you see this as last mile logistics sector evolving in India, and what are your plans for the future?
Yeah, look, I think that's an interesting perspective. So when we talk about the future, let's talk about the next 5 years. Things change very rapidly today, and even 5 years is a fairly long horizon. I see over the next 5 years these silos that have got created getting broken into something which is more interoperable. I By that, I don't mean, every time there's an acquisition or every time there's a merger, that's more vertical, or that's kind of like more one step forward or one step backward, but it's really not solving the problem of interoperability. And what I would like, it's both my prediction for the future in a selfish way, because that's what Pidge is building, but it's also my hope on in a more kind of like for growing India, for growing Bharat. I mean, I would like to see that interoperability. I mean, that's really my vision for the future. And from Pidge's perspective, again, Indian logistics space is huge, especially the road logistics and the intracity logistics space is huge. And we very much want to be at the forefront of creating that interoperability, building efficiencies, making sure that the ecosystem is growing in a sustainable manner. And sustainable here is, environment plus, more importantly, economic sustainability as well.
It was wonderful having you with us. Thank you so much for sharing your views, Ratnesh.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Pramhinga, and look forward to being in touch with you again.